There are moments when provision feels distant, when effort seems heavy, and when the weight of responsibility presses harder than hope. In those moments, it is easy to believe that lack defines your future. But lack is not your destiny. Scarcity is not your identity. And delay is not denial. What you hear today is not just words, it is alignment. Before any visible miracle appears, something must shift within. Financial breakthroughs do not begin in bank accounts. They begin in belief. They begin when fear loosens its grip and trust takes its place. God does not respond to panic. He responds to faith. As you listen, let go of the pressure to make everything happen on your own. Release the belief that provision depends solely on your strength, your effort, or your strategy. God is not limited by systems, timing, or numbers. He is not confined by what you see. What feels impossible to you is ordinary to Him. This prayer is not a transaction. It is not a formula. It is an invitation to trust. Trust realigns the heart, and alignment opens the door to provision. When the heart is positioned correctly, resources begin to follow purpose. You may have been faithful in hidden seasons, faithful when results were slow, faithful when opportunities were scarce. God has seen every quiet sacrifice, every responsible decision, every moment you chose integrity over ease. Nothing has been wasted. Financial miracles often arrive through unexpected channels. They may come as wisdom before wealth, direction before increase, discipline before overflow. God often prepares the vessel before He pours. Preparation is not punishment, it is positioning. Fear closes the hands, faith opens them. Anxiety narrows vision, trust expands it. As fear releases its hold, clarity begins to form. Decisions become wiser, opportunities become visible. Peace replaces pressure, and provision begins to move. God's provision carries peace. What comes from Him does not bring regret, shame, or bondage. It brings stability. It brings responsibility. It brings gratitude. Financial blessing is not meant to control you. It is meant to serve purpose. As you listen, choose gratitude. Gratitude signals readiness. It acknowledges that provision is already in motion, even if it has not yet arrived. Gratitude speaks confidence in God's timing rather than frustration with delay. Your situation does not intimidate God. Debt does not frighten Him. Need does not overwhelm Him. He has supplied before, and He will supply again. The same God who provided daily sustenance in the wilderness still provides today. This prayer does not promise instant wealth. It invites lasting provision. It invites wisdom to manage, discernment to choose, and discipline to steward. Miracles that last are built on responsibility, not impulse. Let your heart rest as you listen. Rest does not mean inactivity. It means trust without striving. It means doing what you can while trusting God with what you cannot. Provision flows best where peace resides. Today, choose alignment over anxiety, faith over fear, trust over tension. As your heart settles, allow expectation to rise, not expectation rooted in desperation, but expectation rooted in confidence. God is not late, He is intentional. What He releases arrives at the right moment, in the right measure, and for the right purpose. What seems delayed may be perfectly timed. As this prayer ends, let hope remain, let peace remain, let trust remain. Because when the heart aligns, provision follows, and when trust leads, miracles are never far behind. Listen, receive, and rest, knowing that God is already at work. Faith has always been the doorway through which provision enters a person's life. Long before circumstances change, something shifts internally. When someone hears a prayer rooted in trust, expectation, and alignment with God's will, it awakens faith that may have been dormant. This is not about magic words or instant results. It is about opening the heart to believe again that God is a provider, not only in spiritual matters, but in every area of life, including finances. Many people struggle financially not only because of external limitations, but because hope has been eroded over time. Repeated disappointments, unanswered prayers, and prolonged waiting can quietly convince the heart that scarcity is permanent. When faith weakens, expectation lowers, and without expectation, people stop positioning themselves to receive. Hearing a prayer of faith interrupts that cycle. It reintroduces possibility. It reminds the listener that God's ability has not diminished, even if circumstances have. Faith responds to what it hears. Words spoken in prayer carry direction. When a prayer declares God as source rather than circumstances, it shifts focus. The mind begins to detach from fear and reconnect with trust. This internal realignment is often the first step toward financial breakthrough. Before provision manifests externally, confidence is restored internally. Prayer also realigns priorities. Financial miracles are not simply about money appearing, they are about order being restored. When the heart listens to a prayer that emphasizes stewardship, obedience, and dependence on God, it challenges unhealthy attachments to control, anxiety, and comparison. Faith begins to replace fear-driven decisions. This change in mindset affects choices, opportunities, and discipline. God often responds to faith that is simple but sincere. Faith does not need to be loud or dramatic, it needs to be genuine. Hearing a prayer spoken with conviction can ignite this sincerity. It reassures the listener that they are not forgotten, that their needs are seen, and that provision is part of God's care. This reassurance calms the heart, and a calm heart is more receptive to guidance. Financial miracles are frequently connected to obedience. Hearing a prayer of faith often brings clarity rather than cash. It may inspire action, encourage generosity, or prompt wiser decisions. These responses are not separate from miracles. They are often the path through which miracles arrive. God's provision flows through alignment, not desperation. Faith also breaks isolation. Financial stress often creates shame and silence. Hearing a prayer reminds the listener that dependence on God is not weakness. It invites them back into trust rather than self-condemnation. When shame lifts, confidence returns, and confidence allows people to engage opportunities they may have avoided. Prayer has the power to reshape expectations. Expectation influences perception. When faith is activated, people begin to notice possibilities they once ignored. Doors that were always present become visible. Conversations, ideas, and connections gain new significance. This heightened awareness is not coincidence. It is the result of a heart tuned to expectancy. God's provision is not limited to one method. It can come through unexpected channels, timing, and people. Hearing a prayer of faith reminds the listener that miracles are not predictable, but they are possible. This openness prevents rigid thinking that restricts how provision can arrive. Faith also sustains patience. Financial miracles do not always arrive instantly. Hearing a prayer that emphasizes trust over urgency helps the listener endure the waiting without losing hope. Patience protects faith from disappointment. It allows trust to mature rather than collapse under pressure. When faith is awakened, fear loses authority. Fear says lack is permanent. Faith says provision is possible. Fear says hold tightly. Faith says trust freely. This shift affects behavior. People begin to act from confidence rather than panic. This change alone can open pathways to improvement and opportunity. Prayer also invites partnership with God. Financial provision is not a transaction. It is a relationship. Hearing a prayer reinforces that God desires involvement in every area of life. This awareness encourages ongoing dialogue rather than one-time requests. Relationship deepens trust, and trust positions the heart to receive. Faith honors God's role as provider while acknowledging human responsibility. It does not eliminate effort, it directs it. When faith is stirred, work gains purpose and decisions gain clarity. This alignment increases effectiveness and reduces wasted energy. Financial miracles often begin quietly. They start with renewed hope, restored confidence, and disciplined trust. Hearing a prayer of faith initiates this process. It does not bypass growth, it supports it. It does not replace wisdom, it reinforces it. God's ability to provide is not limited by history, failure, or lack. Hearing a prayer that declares this truth reminds the listener that their past does not define their future. Faith looks forward. It believes that change is possible, not because circumstances are favorable, but because God is faithful. When faith is awakened, the heart opens. When the heart opens, trust grows, and where trust grows, provision finds room to flow. Faith becomes most powerful when it shifts from passive hope to active alignment. The second key point centers on the idea that what you hear repeatedly shapes what you believe, and what you believe influences how you live, decide, and respond. Hearing a prayer once is not magic, but it can become a turning point when it aligns the heart with trust instead of fear, expectation instead of doubt, and obedience instead of anxiety. Financial breakthrough often begins internally before it manifests externally. Many people desire change without changing their inner posture. They want different results while maintaining the same mindset. Fear-based thinking, fear of lack, fear of loss, fear of failure creates resistance. When fear dominates, decisions become defensive. Opportunities are missed, generosity feels risky, and trust in provision weakens. A prayer heard with openness interrupts that cycle by redirecting attention away from scarcity and toward faith. Faith is not denial of reality, it is a decision about perspective. Financial pressure can be real, but it does not have to define identity or future. When a prayer speaks life, peace, and provision, it challenges internal narratives built by disappointment and delay. Hearing truth replaces inner noise. It reminds the heart that provision is not limited to visible resources alone. Alignment happens when belief, intention, and action begin to move in the same direction. A prayer that emphasizes trust reorients priorities. It encourages wise stewardship instead of panic spending. It invites patience instead of desperation. This alignment creates space for clarity, discernment, and disciplined action, conditions that often precede breakthrough. Many financial struggles are intensified by emotional responses rather than circumstances alone. Anxiety clouds judgment. Comparison breeds dissatisfaction. Impatience leads to poor decisions. A prayer that centers peace does more than comfort. It stabilizes. Stability allows clearer thinking. Clear thinking allows better choices. Better choices change outcomes over time. Hearing a prayer with faith also reinforces the principle of expectation. Expectation is not entitlement. It is readiness. When the heart expects good, it becomes attentive. Opportunities are recognized instead of overlooked. Ideas are acted upon instead of dismissed. Connections are valued instead of ignored. Expectation sharpens awareness. Faith-based hearing also nurtures gratitude. Gratitude shifts focus from what is missing to what is present. This shift does not create money, but it changes behavior. Grateful people manage resources differently. They recognize value, respect provision, and avoid waste. Gratitude invites growth because it honors what already exists. Alignment with faith also influences generosity. Fear resists giving. Faith enables it. Generosity is not about amount, but posture. A generous heart trusts that provision flows rather than ends. This trust does not guarantee immediate return, but it cultivates openness. Openness attracts collaboration, favor, and opportunity. The prayer acts as a reset. It interrupts internal scripts shaped by disappointment. It reminds the listener that provision is not solely the result of effort, but also of grace. This awareness reduces pressure. Reduced pressure restores focus. Focus improves productivity. Hearing a prayer once can mark a moment of decision. Not a promise of instant wealth, but a commitment to trust, act wisely, and remain open. Financial miracles are often recognized in hindsight, not headlines. They appear as timely provision, unexpected support, or gradual improvement that once seemed impossible. Faith alignment also corrects motives. When desire for money is rooted solely in fear or comparison, satisfaction remains elusive. When desire is rooted in purpose, supporting family, serving others, living responsibly, direction becomes clearer. Purpose-driven goals invite discipline and patience. A prayer heard with intention encourages surrender. Surrender does not mean inactivity. It means releasing control over outcomes while remaining responsible for effort. This balance prevents burnout. It allows rest without complacency. Alignment also affects speech. What is spoken reinforces what is believed. When fear dominates, speech reflects lack. When faith leads, speech reflects possibility. Words influence mindset. Mindset influences action. Action influences result. Financial growth often requires time. A prayer heard once can plant a seed. Seeds do not grow instantly, but they grow consistently when nurtured. Faith nurtures patience. Patience sustains effort. Alignment with trust also reduces envy. Comparison distorts perception. It creates urgency without clarity. Faith restores individuality. It reminds each person that provision arrives uniquely. Removing comparison restores peace. The prayer does not replace planning. It enhances it. Faith sharpens discipline. It motivates learning, budgeting, saving, and investing wisely. These actions may appear ordinary, but they create stability. Alignment invites hope. Hope fuels perseverance. Perseverance sustains effort. Sustained effort produces change. The cycle begins internally, often sparked by a single moment of hearing something that reawakens belief. A financial miracle does not always arrive as sudden abundance. Sometimes it arrives as freedom from fear, clarity in decision-making, or strength to remain faithful in the process. These internal shifts often precede external change. Hearing a prayer once can redirect focus from panic to purpose. That redirection may not feel dramatic, but it is powerful. When alignment occurs, life begins to move differently, not instantly, but intentionally. Faith that attracts breakthrough is not passive. It is expectant, aligned, and responsive. Hearing a prayer is not a mystical shortcut. It is a moment of alignment where belief, hope, and trust converge. The power is not in sound alone, but in what happens internally when the heart agrees with truth. Financial miracles do not begin with money. They begin with mindset. They begin when faith shifts from desperation to expectation. Expectation changes posture. Instead of waiting helplessly, the heart becomes attentive. It listens differently. It watches for opportunity instead of fixating on lack. Faith-filled expectation does not ignore reality. It reinterprets it. It believes that present limitation is not the final condition. This belief reshapes behavior, decisions, and reactions long before circumstances change. Alignment matters. Prayer that attracts breakthrough aligns desire with purpose. It is not rooted in greed or fear, but in stewardship and responsibility. God does not bless chaos, He blesses alignment. When motives are clarified, trust deepens. Financial blessing is not merely about receiving, it is about readiness to manage, multiply, and use wisely. Faith acknowledges this responsibility and prepares for it. Faith also requires release, holding tightly to anxiety, comparison, or control blocks expectancy. Financial worry often becomes an identity rather than a condition. Prayer invites release, release of fear, release of past failure, release of limiting beliefs. When fear loosens its grip, space is created for faith to operate. Hearing a prayer can become a turning point when it interrupts negative patterns of thought. Repeated exposure to scarcity thinking reinforces limitation. Faith-filled prayer disrupts that cycle. It speaks abundance where lack has been rehearsed. It reminds the mind that provision is not solely dependent on visible resources. Faith grows through agreement. Agreement is internal consent. It is the moment when doubt stops arguing and trust takes its place. This does not eliminate questions, but it reorders priority. Trust becomes louder than fear. Hope becomes stronger than memory. Agreement activates action. Action is the evidence of faith. Faith that attracts miracles does not wait for perfect conditions. It moves in obedience. Small steps taken in trust often precede major breakthroughs. Financial miracles frequently arrive through opportunity, connection, or insight, rather than sudden provision. Faith positions the heart to recognize these openings. Consistency sustains faith. One prayer can ignite belief, but ongoing trust maintains alignment. Expectation is not a moment, it is a posture. Gratitude reinforces it. Thankfulness before manifestation affirms belief. It acknowledges that provision is already in motion, even if unseen. Faith also reframes timing. Immediate results are not always the goal. Preparation often precedes provision. Delays refine patience and sharpen discipline. Faith trusts that timing is intentional, not neglectful. This trust prevents discouragement and maintains focus. Miracles often require change. New income may require new habits. Increased provision may require increased discipline. Faith that attracts breakthrough remains teachable. It allows growth to accompany blessing. Resistance to change often limits expansion. Listening to prayer with expectation opens awareness. Awareness notices ideas that were previously ignored. It recognizes favor where chance once seemed random. Faith sharpens perception. What once felt impossible begins to feel plausible. Alignment also includes integrity. Financial blessing disconnected from integrity creates instability. Faith honors honesty, diligence, and stewardship. Miracles that last are built on these foundations. God's provision strengthens what is aligned with truth. Faith must also confront worth. Many people subconsciously believe they are undeserving of abundance. Prayer challenges this belief. It reminds the heart that provision is not earned by perfection, but entrusted through purpose. Worth is not measured by past mistakes. Expectation does not demand. It receives. It remains humble. It understands that miracles are expressions of grace, not entitlement. This humility keeps the heart open and grounded. Faith that attracts financial breakthrough remains resilient. It does not collapse at setbacks. It interprets obstacles as redirection rather than rejection. Resilience sustains expectancy through uncertainty. Hearing a prayer becomes powerful when it shifts internal alignment. When belief, expectation, and obedience come together, change begins internally before it appears externally. Faith prepares the way. It opens the heart, sharpens awareness, and positions life for provision. Miracles often arrive quietly. They appear as opportunity, clarity, or connection. Faith recognizes them. it responds, it gives thanks. And through this process, hearing a prayer becomes more than a moment. It becomes a catalyst. As this message comes to a close, remember that true financial breakthrough does not begin with money. It begins with alignment. When faith replaces fear, gratitude reshapes desire, and obedience follows trust, the heart becomes ready to receive what God chooses to release. This prayer was never meant to manipulate outcomes, but to realign the spirit with divine provision. Miracles are not attracted by words alone, but by hearts that believe, listen, and respond. Whether the change comes suddenly or gradually, trust that God is already at work beyond what you can see. Remain faithful, remain grateful, and remain obedient, because provision flows most freely where trust is deeply rooted.